Beach District. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the invocation, which I believe is seat 2 today.
Yes. Great Mother, we call on your depth and strength to give us thanks for the world around us. Thanks for all the creatures and plants and the mysteries of the ocean depths. Let us learn their lessons and seek their truths. Help us to discern how we have polluted our oceans and empathize with the creatures that have no voice, so that we might live in harmony, a better life for all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Great. Roll call.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Rivers.
Here.
Commissioner Way.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Flowers.
Here.
Commissioner West.
Here.
Great. Next is adoption and approval of the agenda. We have a motion to adopt.
moved.
We have a,
I motion approved.
all right, so that's a second for Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Public comment? No? Government representative comments. Is that getting worse, at least? Feels like every meeting, that feedback is getting worse and worse.
All right, good afternoon, Carlos Abilene, City of St. Augustine Fire Department. I know Chris usually does our public safety update, and he will. I came here personally today to thank this board for their continued support of public safety. We had an unbelievably busy weekend with the nor'easter 2 weeks ago, and I can tell you that the board's decisions over the past couple of years to help supplement public safety and ensuring safe passage of our waterways had a profound impact on our ability to respond and help voters and save lives that weekend. So I appreciate everything that you do. I'll leave, Chris to give you the that, but more from me as an administrator to you.
Yeah. I think we're going to pause for maybe a minute or two and figure out what this audio issue is, because I can't imagine another hour and a half of this. At least, is there a way to turn it off for now until we start back up?
I'm trying to figure, well, it won't be here. No?
Is it me?
It sounded like you had it up against there.
Was that killing the sound?
All right, well. Maybe we should try to proceed. Why not? We'll see what happens. Any other government representatives?
Jim Piggott, Director of General Services, City of St. Augustine. 4 items quickly for you today. First of all, I brought up to you, I think it was 2 meetings ago, that there was a large floating dock in San Sebastian River, 17 feet by 12 feet. Finally got the invoice, gave it to Elise. It was $4,000, which was the estimate that I mentioned to y'all. So that's been out, destroyed, removed and destroyed. Not to step on Chris's toes, but from the last nor'easter that we had with the king tide and everything, we didn't lose any boats from our mooring field, which is a plus from the mooring field. I'm not gonna say anything further, because I'm sure Chris will. Next to the last thing is, as a reminder, I brought this up last meeting. In January, I'll be bringing to you all interlocal agreement for signature for our fine grant application, which needs to be in by the end of March. So after you approve the interlocal, then we bring it back to our city commission along with a resolution, and that goes in with the application, and it's gonna be again 50,000 from you and 150,000 from Find, which will make 3 grant applications now. So next December, we should start to, we should hopefully start dredging again. And then lastly, we have 2 boats that I want to bring to your attention that I would like to get approval for, that we're going to have pulled. One boat was in Salt Run. Police officer here, our new Marine police officer, can talk more if you have any questions. There was a boat in Salt Run where the owner had passed away. The paperwork was already in process to have that boat hauled out and destroyed. That broke loose during the storm. We have it corralled, at least in an area that really boats can't get into. We have a quote for that. And we also have another boat down by the Doug Crane boat ramp that FWC gave us the paperwork. It's all right to pull. The total amount is $7,450. Again, we're going to split that 75-25 with Find. So the port's portion would be $1,862.50. And this was the estimates that we received from the company that we have a contract with. And the Find will be responsible for $5,587.50.
Who's the company pulling them, Jim?
It's a company called TSI.
Salvage company?
They pull the boats, and they bring it, and they destroy it, and they haul it away for us, all one.
So it doesn't go to SAMC, they're taking them off completely?
Yes.
Like on a
yes.
barge or something?
If they put it on the barge, yes. Some are able to.
Never to come to our waters again?
Never to come to our waters again. So, if I can get an approval for that, and we'll move forward. Again, that was an estimate.
Tim, could you give me the exact amount of the board's
For
portion?
the Port District, we're looking for $1,862.50. And the fine cost will be $5,587.50. And the total cost for both boats, the estimate, is $7,450.
That's for us?
No, that's the total. Our share's about $1,800.
$1,863,
Okay.
essentially.
Hey, Jim, what about that boat at the northeast, or northwest corner of the bridge?
Right.
I was gonna let.
Oh, you let him,
police
you
officer-
don't, okay,
Yeah, that's a fun story.
okay.
We may put lights on it for Nights of Lights, we don't know yet. So,
All right,
So you're asking us to approve that now?
yes, if we could, just a nod, verbal, yes, go for it.
That's not something that needs to be noticed, I guess?
Well,
Probably not.
It's not a grant application, so I'll go ahead and move that we contribute our share of $1,862.52 for removal of the boats on Salt Run and Doug Crane.
Just a question, if we're spending money, how is it not a grant application? I don't understand.
You have, I think, money budgeted in your budget.
So this is part of something we've approved?
Yeah, this
so
is-
that then we don't have to?
Yeah, it's coming out of a line item.
Under
great.
derelict boats.
I second that.
All right, that's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Great.
If anything should change, I'll bring it back to you in December, hopefully it'll be out by then.
Can I ask
Right.
you one question?
Sure.
Are we breaking records with fuel sales down at City Marina?
This past year, we broke records for not just fuel, but moorings and dockage.
But fuel is going crazy. Eric was saying that they're running out of gas every day almost.
We're
Good.
getting inundated with a lot of folks.
Can you fit a bigger tank's 20 years old now? Bigger tank.
We could take a look at it. The tank was installed the year after I got here. I got here in 2006, so I think 2007,
Not 20 years old yet.
but almost. So
Just curious, because that's such a big lifeline, that fuel dock at the city marina, and that we're literally running the tanks dry most days is
Yeah.
spectacular, and it'd be nice if we could have more fuel.
Right. We're also getting bigger boats in with the breakwater,
True,
which
which is
take a
wonderful.
lot more. Sometimes we just call a tanker just for that boat.
Well, you're also getting all the boats going back south for the winter.
And I think
Right,
COVID
yeah.
is helping us because people just want to stay on the water away from people.
Right. Could I just ask one question, just for future, just something to look into, is, would it be, Mr. Meek, would it be possible for us, if it came up, from the city to finance a new fuel, a bigger fuel tank? I don't know if our charter would let us, but it'd just be an interesting question.
You have to look in that, the commission would like.
That's all.
Anyone have anything else?
I have a question.
Yes.
How did the Marine Street fare in the flooding, the high tides last week?
The marine, just very, very minor damage. We did fairly well. The docks were essentially rebuilt after Matthew, Irma, Dorian, and another nor'easter, so we had very little damage.
Good, thank you.
So, Pat, you want to talk about that one boat in the?
Good afternoon. Pat Harvey with the City of St. Augustine Marine Unit. It's a slow process. We all know it's a slow process. We've talked to the owner and have tried to reach out to the registered owner. We're working on that. The owner's aware of it. He also lives on another one of the vessels downtown that we've had issues with. He's working downtown. Thursday, he'll be issued a citation for the boat, and we've started the process, so we're within our 90 days now.
You're talking about the one that's in the corner at the bridge?
Yes, ma'am. The one, yeah. It's actually tied to DOT property, so I'm dealing with them as well.
And that was just recently sold from what I heard, so it probably hadn't changed, so you're going back
Yeah,
to
it hasn't
the-
changed hands legally yet.
Oh, boy.
And there's no bill of sale. So, we'll
Just for
probably,
clarification, it's always best if you sell a boat to walk the people right down to the DMV and put it in their name right then and there.
so we're dealing with the registered owner as well. But as of right now, we've started the process, so it's kind of where we are.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Sydney Lindblad, St. Johns County Parks and Recreation. Just a quick update on our beaches. As we all know, we went through that nor'easter. Our beaches have experienced some extreme erosion, and we finally just got beach driving fully opened up Monday of this week. So it held the water with the wind, so it couldn't escape anywhere. So we do have now driving open at Porpoise Point. Volano is still closed due to the erosion, and there's not enough beach there to provide vehicle access as well as pedestrian access. And then we are open on our south beaches all the way back down to Fort Matanzas. Our FEMA dune project has completed, so that parking lot is back open and usable to the public, so. that's all
Is
I
there anything left of the FEMA dune project? Did that get annihilated before it was even done?
It got pretty wrecked, but there's still a little
Heard a
bit there.
video
Yeah.
from the Matanzas lady. I was going to ask you a question, I forgot, so.
Any other questions?
No, but I do want to thank you and your entire department for reaching out to all of us commissioners to have one-on-one meetings because of sunshine, and introduce the new Director of Parks and Rec, Ryan Kane. I hope for everyone else here that those were productive meetings. I certainly learned a lot.
Wonderful.
Yes.
I had no idea they were working so hard.
Yeah, I was really impressed. And I would just like to encourage that level of transparency and coordination with the county. I consider your department to kind of be our go-to on that from this point forward, and I just appreciate the initiative.
Thank you, and we enjoyed them as well, and we even, after leaving our last one today, said maybe it should be a quarterly meeting.
Yeah.
Something like that, just to get everyone in the same room, so.
Yeah,
We
great.
enjoyed it just as much.
To come in and during us, even a special meeting, just give the whole,
whole
to
rundown.
everybody at once, whatever
Yeah.
would work.
Of course.
Yeah, I think the public would love to learn about what you guys are doing, so great
All
work.
right, thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Josh Underwood, Sheriff's Office Marine Unit. As you know, to echo Chief Avaliz, we've been staying pretty busy with the storm boats. I do have a suggestion with the storms for the port for you guys to take into consideration. We ran into the issue with salvage companies in these boats where these people don't have money to have these boats towed, we're kind of stuck with them. So I don't know if the port could set aside, and if it would even be in the charter, to set aside some type of emergency towing fund for these boats that are hitting the bridge, that are breaking anchorage or whatever, directly with Towboat or Sea Tow or whatever salvage company that could come in an emergency
That's a good
due
idea.
to the towing situation.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we be allowed to do that?
Well,
I don't
some of
see any
those
reason why
guys
not.
won't come out in severe weather, as Mr. Passetti will probably tell you, but still, it's a great idea, and it's
Right.
not always that bad.
Right, and the
As-
problem we run into is the larger 65, 70-foot boats trying to tow with a 30-foot boat
Right. Like that one
when
on
they're
the wall.
properly trained to do these
Right.
tows
And have
versus us.
the boat to do it, an actual towboat.
Correct. That's set up for that. Just something for the board to consider for these future.
How much money do you
Incident.
think we would need to set aside, and, because it'd be in a revolving fund, right, obviously, you know, we'd.
Right.
Right.
I wouldn't even know.
No, the captain
I don't even
said
know how
boat,
much it
towboat,
costs
and
to
sea
tow.
tow. You want me to give it a whirl and see what they come up with?
Wait, so let me understand, we're gonna be subsidizing the owner of a 70-foot yacht for towing?
He actually had a
Right.
towboat.
Some of these people that have these big yachts, you would think they would have money to fund this, and they don't. Like, they're living on this house, this is their house, and there is no money. These boats turn into derelict once they hit something. So to end on that thing that I'm throwing out there is, from the storm, we are working ourselves 4 boats that have turned into derelict status. So we're gonna end up on the back end in the Port District having to fund these removals.
As opposed to just having them towed to what, like a mooring ball at that point? When
Or a
when
dock
they're-
or
when they're
something to
dragging,
get
mooring ball
them
dock,
where they're-
wherever. At
They're
that
not
point,
banging
yeah.
all night against
Right, might be cheaper.
the bridge, the wall, or somewhere, a piling, and putting a hole in the side, and then the next morning they're sunk.
Well, they would still be liable
Yeah, I would,
for any costs incurred and.
Correct. Even on the derelict, we're still going through the criminal process.
Right. Yeah, I don't see a problem with this.
But that's just a suggestion I was gonna throw out about that.
Yeah, Sandy, if you're willing to make some phone calls and see.
We have
I
towboat
think-
and sea tow.
I think we could definitely
Yeah.
think about talking that over. At least, can we maybe put that on next month's agenda? Discussion of maybe revolving emergency tow fund.
And then I just wanted to put a reminder out there.
if there are other port authorities in the state of Florida that have such a fund, instead of like reinventing the wheel, if we could maybe take a look at them for an example.
I'll try to do some research on that.
And then
Sorry,
no, that's good. Just a reminder, the St. Augustine Harbor Safety and Security Committee meeting is the 6th of December on a Monday at 9 a.m. at the BOCC. Usually one BOCC commissioner sits in it, so I didn't know if anybody had free time that they could sit in it as well.
What was the date again?
December 6th, it's a Monday, it's at 9 a.m. And usually Commissioner Waldron sits on it from the BOCC. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chris Passetti, St. Augustine Fire Department. Just to give you an update, I don't have the total number of hours. We were underway, we had a total of 10 Mayday calls during the nor'easter that came through. One was on the North Shoal, and the other ones were pretty much right in the downtown area. I think Jim mentioned it, none of the vessels actually broke free of the mooring field. I think the harbor master, Eric Malden, does an excellent job keeping those things maintained, so happy to say none of them came from the city mooring field itself. The other 9 vessels, 5 of them ended up being bridge strikes. I'm not sure how many people were total pulled off of their boats. I know we had a total that we were actively involved in from our fire department, and then the county fire and the sheriff's office all assisted. We had one that had 2 adults, a small child, and then we later found out they had their dogs, a dog and cat aboard. That was the boat that turned about 90 degrees underneath the boat and was starting to take on water pretty quick. They were woken up to that bridge strike. So they said that he did his anchor watch at like 5 a.m. and the next thing he knew, he was woken up to the the bridge striking, and they listed about 90 degrees. So really fortunate that call turned out well. The other ones, we had some of them pinned against the bridge, and some of them ended up over at the city marina as we got through. So it was quite an eventful.
Chris, can you approach the microphone a little bit?
Sure.
I think some of the crowd's having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, so, total 10 calls I believe we ran on, one of them being on the shoals, 5 were bridge strikes, and it was an eventful weekend, but happy to tell you the fire department guys performed well, so did our partners from the sheriff's office and them, so.
That
pretty
big
well.
sailboat that was up against the seawall.
Yeah, the
where
endless
did
summer.
Where did he break loose? Was he just tied up in the bay, or was he?
So he was tied up in the bay, he ended up broke free, and I don't remember that captain's name, but he did a heck of a job. He actually found himself, Carlos.
Yeah.
He ended up in the middle of the mooring field right off the fort and did a great job trying to keep the boat from striking anything.
For a while.
Yeah, I think it was 73-foot vessel that he was kind of tangled up in there, but never struck any other vessels. When we got there, of course, he called and his motor had burned up, so he called, thought he had a fire aboard as we got there and started to assist him, but he did a heck of a job. But yeah, I can't say enough great things about him.
I think he did too, and I saw his ground tackle, and it was massive. 100-foot of massive chain to go with it, and the line snapped.
Yeah. Yep, he did a great job. So. Yeah. But any other questions for our events of that week? So. All right.
No, I don't think so.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Any other government representatives? No? Secretary Treasurer's report.
October actually is the first month of the new fiscal year. So in the city police law enforcement overtime of the 8,000, nothing was spent. Really, the only thing that was spent was in this sheriff's department, St. Johns County, of $1,153, and that was probably done in September but paid in October. The funds available in the Florida State Board of Administration is $23,169. In the operating account, to date, the balance, and that should say funds available October, not September, $220,130. In the money market account, there is $986,440. In the reserve, of course, we keep the 1.5 million. So the total funds that we have available to us are $2,729,739. Of the taxes budgeted, the new year, it's $621,283. We've received $10,665 so far. We're going to get quite a bit in November. And that's it.
Elise, is the reserve money market not an interest yielding account?
That's the only interest yielding account is the money market account.
How can we get interest on the reserve?
It's all in one account. They're one account.
So you're posting interest from the money market account in general into just the general money market account.
Wait, one person, someone just explain it to me, that's all.
Sorry, so that's being reserved on paper, but not in actuality. It is all one account. So all of the interest is just being credited to the non-reserve.
That's 1.5 million is the amount we decided to save.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, that's all.
Good, great. That brings us to approval of minutes. Any modifications to the minutes? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Great. Engineering report.
Other than the 2 items listed under old business, I don't have anything additional to add.
Okay, great. So we'll,
Can we ask questions of the engineer?
sure.
Can we get a video or something of Summerhaven from above, from the damage of the storm? Has anything been done on that? Drone video or something?
Do we have it, or?
Could we get that?
Sure, yeah.
It looks like the whole berm's gone and the road's gone.
Most of the berm, of the FEMA berm that was constructed recently is gone. Actually, the port's dune that was constructed originally is still
Which
performing
is set
well.
back a little further, actually. What about 20, at least 20 feet further back, isn't it? If not
At
more.
least that. And plus, there's a lot more volume in that.
So that berm is still there and the plantings?
Absolutely.
So is there any way that we could, and maybe that's what I was going to ask the county lady, can we get any kind of drone video of what the damage?
Yeah, actually, we've taken drone videos, so
Okay.
I can provide that through
That would be
Elise.
great. Thank you.
Great, that brings us to old business. Item A, purchase of radiation detector. There were some outstanding questions maybe on the part of the port, some of the commissioners maybe? Is that right?
I'm all for it.
Jane, maybe?
Yeah, same questions that I had before. I think there are opportunities through federal grants to law enforcement through the Department of Homeland Security, countering weapons of mass destruction. I am personally not in favor of this particular funding request, but I just would have liked to have seen an exploration of other funding sources before coming to us first.
Yes, ma'am. And
especially the county.
I can tell you, one of the things that we sought out was the port security grant. Is that the one you're referring to?
Mm-hmm.
So cybersecurity is really their big thing right now, and they can't officially tell you, but if you're not seeking out for the larger ports for cybersecurity, you won't even be considered for the second round of the opportunity, really. So that's kind of the biggest issue on that, as far as that specific grant. We had the class, and I believe we saw you out there too while we were out there with the backpacks, and
They were
had
working
quite
all
a
day.
crowd looking through it. So unfortunately, we weren't allowed to invite some of you guys to that training. We attempted to open up a slot so we could bring you, but the DHS guys would not allow it. But it is if you look at the small vessel initiative for Homeland Security, it's one of the top priorities for it, and that's what makes it important to us. The small little, harbors and inlets and stuff are really their main point of concern, because of those larger ones, they already have the funding or the static detectors as they come through. So that's what kind of ultimately led us to you guys. The other part is coming to you as a joint collective whole. It allows us to purchase that as one unit. Because, if you go to the county, their hazmat guys are going to say, oh, no, we want this one instead of that one. The sheriff's office bomb guys are going to say, no, get that one, and then none of our equipment talks to each other. So we can run into that issue as well. So that's kind of what brought it as a collective forefront and what ultimately brought us to you guys for it.
And if I can also, if you don't mind, I can speak on the port security grant. We've applied for the port security grant multiple times. That's what funded part of our dock, that you guys funded the other part as well as find. That funded most of our vessel too as well. The last 3 years we've applied, they've denied us. We've asked for a vessel for the river, we've asked for repowering, and partially because it doesn't involve cybersecurity. They're given a focus each year, and if it doesn't involve that, it goes right on down the list. And it all depends also what the captain of the port priorities are. And things like the river and other stuff that we're seeking funding for, it's not a high priority for them. So, and then resonate what Chris said, rather than all of us come up here and kind of do the pirate thing where we all kind of apply for our grants and go, oh, well, I want this, I want this. This is kind of why we all got together and said, this is what we need as a group. And that's why we came to you as a group this time, so.
And we did seek, the port security grant we are applying for this year, we're doing it for a joint maritime complex for $1 million for the port security grant to fund. So we are going for that grant. We did, I am the statewide coordinator for waterborne response for the Regional Domestic Security Task Force in the 7 regions for the state of Florida. We did put rad and nuke detectors in there, but anything waterborne this year did not make the cut for funding because of the cut that came from the presidential guidelines for Homeland Security this year. So we did try that grant for Regional Domestic Security Task Force. That was a FEMA grant, and we just didn't make the cut for it.
And what was the total you were looking for?
I believe it was about $12,000, 11.5, somewhere in that range, I want to say.
Yeah, I don't have that sheet that I gave you guys
This
originally.
stuff gets upgraded, it's just a software upgrade, you don't have to buy new pagers every
Correct.
couple of years.
Most of the older stuff, some of the stuff we use on our engines. Technology doesn't change a whole lot for the radiation.
Right.
So yeah, this is not going to be an ongoing expense every couple of years, you're not anticipating?
But what we do see, Commissioner, is us coming together and kind of pooling our project. And maybe like in the same sense that Sydney met with you guys ahead of time, we can meet with you guys ahead of time and figure out what your priorities are to more fine tune our requests.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, it just kind of came out of the blue, the sort of randomness of the radiation detection, especially out on the open water. It just didn't seem to be really honing in on an exact target. So I just want to make sure that we're spending our money wisely and making sure that you guys have the right equipment to do your jobs. I'm certainly not going to stand on the side of a boat that, you know, leads to weapons of mass destruction hitting St. Augustine. But I do want all funding sources to be explored first for issues like this going forward. And definitely one of my concerns was it just really did seem very random. But hopefully it works and gets the job done for you guys. But those were my concerns.
Yeah, I share those concerns. It feels like the benefit is mostly going to be felt outside the district, and so I'm not sure it makes the most sense for the taxpayers of the Port District to be footing this bill, but it sounds like it's kind of a done deal anyway, so maybe we should just go ahead and make a
Chairman Brown,
motion.
just for the extra information, at the 9/16 meeting, the proposal made was for 10 units at a cost of $1,350 each, for a total funding request of $13,500.
13,000, okay.
13500.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, it's just me. Good, all right, motion passes. Congratulations, fellas. Next up is Summerhaven Sand Fencing, Friends of Summerhaven.
I could start. We did apply for and receive the sand fencing permit from the DEP.
State your name.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know, we all know you, but, you know.
Ken Craig, Taylor Engineering. So we've received the sand fencing permit. We're outside of turtle nesting season right now. As long as we get the fence built before May 1st of next year, we're fine. If we could theoretically go past May 1st, but there's a bunch of additional conditions that have to be met, including monitoring for sea turtles and things like that. But it's something that certainly should and probably could be done well before then. So the question's really coming down to how are we going to move forward with actually constructing the project.
That's where I come in. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Terry Parker, 9181 G. Johnson Road. I want to thank you for allowing Taylor Engineering to secure the fence permit. And with your permission, the Friends of the Summerhaven are willing to see the process through from accepting bids and overseeing the project from installation to completion, if that meets with your approval.
The benefit there being that we don't have to pay Taylor a ton of money to do that.
That's right.
Right.
So you volunteer to put the fences up, in other words?
No, we volunteer to obtain bids from hopefully local contractors that are qualified to do that, present them to the board for your approval, and proceed from there.
I'd rather go through our secretary's office. I don't mean any disrespect, Mr. Parker, I don't. I know you've worked hard, a lot of people have down at Summerhaven. But I'm personally of the mind that after this last storm, and even before that, when I saw how the berm was made, that there was asphalt in it, I pulled out I swear to you, I pulled out ballast stones and old electrical lines, and now that's all on the beach. I just don't want to spend another dime at Summerhaven until we get a legitimate scientific study to tell us how to move forward. I understand you already have the code. That's just my opinion.
If I could speak to that, I think the sand fence has proven to be beneficial in dune restoration, and we are willing to undertake the project or oversee it, push it through, and I think that would be a benefit to the port, to the dune, and it has withstood the storm very well considering the conditions that we experienced down there. My estimate, and Ken may differ, was we lost 2 or 3 feet of the top of the berm at most. All the vegetation really is still there except right there on the very edge. Very few places where the water actually rolled over. It held up extremely well. And sand fencing, I believe, would enhance that over time.
Do we have a sense, even a very, very vague ballpark of what sand fencing would cost for that dune?
Oh, boy. The most recent, the contractor for the FEMA berm constructed sand fencing along, using the same design, basically, but it was with a much smaller dune that was constructed out there. And it was rolled into a bunch of the line items for that project. I don't know off the top of my head. I can certainly get that, and by the time next meeting rolls around, I could give you something that we could compare to.
Right.
Well, if they're gonna get bids.
I
we'll-
could
we'll
secure
get
a
the
minimum
bids.
of 3 bids, I believe, by next meeting.
Yeah,
as well.
at this
And-
point, I think all we're voting on is to allow you to move forward with soliciting bids. So
That's
there's
correct.
really not a whole lot that we're tying ourselves to here, so.
Because basically you're just
ahead.
asking for the permission to get the bids, is what you're asking?
Yes, basically that's
And then
it
we-
now, and we are offering to see the project through with the board's approval after
Then we
review of
consider
bids.
them at the next meeting.
Right.
Yes.
Can I make a statement here? And this is because, first of all, it's not my opinion. As I was going through the board records when I was first elected, a fellow named Ken Crowder used to be a consultant for this board. And he's a pretty smart man. He ran the port of Jacksonville and the airport at the same time. Jacksport or whatever that's called. And in there was a letter from him stating why this board needed an executive director. You see, an executive director, we all have, I'm a travel agent, we have lawyers and real estate agents and whatnot. We don't really know what we're doing in the world out there getting stuff done. And you can't just let contractors take everything. So an executive director is that person that works as a 1099 employee, but does the legwork, just like, getting the bids, doing things like you don't need to pay $400 engineers an hour or what have you, and they're directly responsible to the taxpayer. They go out and do inspections. They make sure things in our contracts and insurance hasn't been bought. And we have multiple people, Mr. Ken Crowder, we have a fellow named Bill Huffman who's come to me, and also Roy Yeager. We could have an executive director in a skinny minute to do the legwork and follow up and make sure that when we do a project, the taxpayers get it fulfilled in full. And that person works for this commission, is not a contractor.
Dan, you had a question?
I did. Regarding the sand fencing, I get that you're not allowed to install it during sea turtle nesting season, but it becomes a permanent structure regardless, even after nesting season, right?
Right, we actually could install it during nesting season, but there's a bunch of additional conditions that have to be met while constructing. It can stay out there. Once it's installed, it's in until you decide you want to remove it.
So I have personally witnessed plenty of false crawls due to sand fencing. I personally have a real big problem with sand fencing due to its impacts on sea turtles. And also I have seen gophers on the flip side, on the land side, trying to get over the dunes and encountering the sand fencing right there at Summerhaven. So I just think from an ecological standpoint, it's a measure of last resort, and I know people are trying like hell to save this area, but I've got real concerns with the impacts that this is going to have on wildlife. So I am not in favor of soliciting bids for that reason. I would like to see an alternative proposal that doesn't have the same sort of ecological impacts that sand fencing does.
Ken, would you please elaborate on the location of the fence?
So this sand fence is positioned basically along the landward toe of the dune. So it's not on the seaward side of the dune, it's on the landward side of it. So those false crawls would probably, the turtle would have to actually go up and over the dune in order to be affected by the.
But I have seen gophers hit it on the landward side.
If that's the case, I'm not, I haven't personally seen that, but not saying that it doesn't happen.
Real fix for the backside of that berm is rabble and mangroves. See, as I'm saying, I'm not against doing a good project, I'm against throwing money away, good money after bad. is all.
The berm has a 20-foot level top on it, or did when it was constructed, and it's pretty much maintained that. It's actually built up, and that's where the vegetation is. And the proposed location for the sand fence is on the west side or opposite the ocean side of that 20-foot vegetated top, just for
The
clarification.
Summerhaven Riverside, is it still clifting there pretty badly? I'm going to go look and get
There,
pictures.
it had some sloughing off during these high water conditions last week, yes.
You think the sand fence would help that? Would that help on that type of activity?
Depending on the direction of the wind, it won't hurt.
Now, I'm not trying to sound stupid.
I'm sorry?
I'm not trying to sound stupid about what I'm about to say, but we just had a whole line of sand fencing with that brand-new berm that's gone. Can't we just go down there and, I mean, that was like a mile of sand fence. Can we just go get it? Because now it's,
I don't know.
did it literally wash away into the ocean?
Yeah, I don't know
The
where it
fencing?
is, or,
Yeah,
Oh.
I have no idea.
Y'all missed an opportunity there.
Sand fence.
Well, because this is only, all we're voting on is information at this point, I think. We're not committing ourselves to any spending or any course of action. I'm just going to move to allow the Friends of the Summerhaven River to solicit bids for sand fencing. We'll have an opportunity to review those bids and also decide whether or not we want to move forward with that at a future meeting. But I so move.
I'll second it.
I would agree.
So all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye, that's fine.
Okay. I believe that was unanimous, right?
And yes, yeah, but it doesn't,
Great.
yes.
Right. Good.
all right, thank you, and I'll see you again next
I
month.
have one more thing it's not about that, it's something else. What Sandy was talking about, as far as my, about an executive director. I'll put it off until comments at the end because I'm losing my voice.
Okay. With that, we move to old business C, Army Corps permit extension.
Not a whole lot to update. We did submit the letter ahead of the 1 month before it expired, the permit expired. We have received acknowledgement of receipt of the letter, and that's the last we've heard. So as long as, until they make a formal determination regarding our request for an extension, the permit remains active.
Do you have a sense of how long it's going to take for them? No, okay.
I wish I did.
Any other comments on that? No. New business. A, presentation, RE impaired water quality. Jen Lombard.
A little backdrop. I have invited Jen Lombard, our Matanzas River Keeper, to make a presentation on the status of our water quality here in the region. It is within the mission of the Port Authority to monitor such things, and apparently DEP and the Water Management District unfortunately don't have the resources to be doing the job adequately. So I've asked Jen to give this presentation, and I hope it informs all of us moving forward.
Yeah, and I sent my PowerPoint presentation to Ms. Kemper. Is that something you're able to queue up for us?
No, I mean, I forwarded it to everybody.
Oh, okay. Is there not a way to show it during the meeting?
I thought we were going to get to see it.
I mean, there's so many pretty pictures in it.
There are.
The video is, whatever you forwarded to me, I forwarded to the commissioners.
Okay.
So, do you have a?
Yeah.
Oh.
I have another, I emailed it to you. I have it on my iPad. I've got a thumb drive on it.
Okay.
Okay, no.
So we can look here. Huh?
I'm not sure this is turned on.
No, I have to, yeah, well, yeah.
Do we need our AV guy?
I don't know which one it is. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right, so this is not on.
Well, I'm going to take this out first, because I want to put it in there. Until it turns on. It's not. And it's not turning on.
Oh, I wish I had brought my laptop. I would have just put it up here.
Yeah. For some reason, this is not coming on. Actually, the keyboard's not coming on.
Yeah, nothing.
And this is. This is fine.
Oh, it's just coming on very
Oh,
slowly.
it's doing updates.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Awesome.
Are you potentially prepared to do this presentation without visuals?
I mean, yeah, it's not going to be nearly as fun.
A lot of like hand gestures.
I can describe the maps to you, I guess.
How about just come back next month and do the full presentation?
Couple more minutes, I think it'll be.
I mean, we only have till 5:30 because P and Z is
If
coming
it's
in,
possible to even do that.
Is there another item on the agenda that you guys want to address while this is booting up, or am I
that's
the
a great
front
idea.
Yeah, that is a great
finale?
idea. Why don't we go ahead and go to new business B, port property lease request, Clay Meek.
Yeah, let me start with borrowing a page out of Carl Blow's book. It's not nearly as fancy as that's going to be, but it's black and white.
Clay, you have to come up here and state your name.
I will, once I get these passed out, so they can
Don't
see what I'm
talk till you
talking
do
about.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Clay Meek, Port General Counsel. And it's a two-page handout that essentially summarizes, we were contacted by an attorney that represents a couple of homeowners that were interested in building a dock. They had approached the city of St. Augustine and were, I guess, exploring or getting information on the permitting process there, but the dock potentially would be, at least a portion of it, on top of submerged land owned by the district. And so the question came up, what, if anything, how would the port deal with that as far as approve it, not approve it? And what I've got there is just a short memo that sort of outlines what I would submit would be the concerning questions to be asked to decide how much or little the port would be interested in approving that type of project. And it's also a memo that I tried to phrase in terms of both the micro and the macro, in that we have currently this one question, but it's reasonable to assume that this issue may come up again in the future. So how would we want to deal with this both now and going forward?
Who's the attorney?
Trying to see if I have the gentleman's name here. I'm not sure I have it in front of me. I can provide that to all the commissioners
What's the
afterwards.
address? Where's the home at on Hospital Creek? Is it?
No address of the particular property was given. It was just
Well, if
a
it's
piece
port
of
property,
property.
it must be pretty much close, it must be close down there to the bridge, I guess.
Potentially. But anyway, the memo outlines, again, sort of the questions that I would submit the port would want to have answered or look at as far as approving it. And also, and I tried to stress this very much in the memo, the 5 potential responses I could come up with, whether I thought they were good responses or bad ones, that's every possible response I could think of.
I wish he would come to the port first before you spend this many hours on a project we don't even know if we're interested in. That's all. Why didn't he call a commissioner?
Well, with all due respect, I don't think a commissioner could have answered this. This is
No,
a
but a
question
commissioner
for the
can sponsor
entire
it in front of
commission.
the board. That's why you contact your elected officials. I'm just a little bit in dismay how much work went into this before we even discussed it. That's all.
Anyway, go ahead, continue, Clay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So anyway, the 5 possible items are a licensing agreement, which is admittedly, it's a chicken dressed up as a duck. It's largely the same thing as a lease, but by going the licensing agreement, you don't have some of the legal protections that are afforded tenants if you were dealing with it as a lease. The other 3 are to simply refuse it outright. We'd have very limited information on this current request, but, depending on the size of the project going forward, whether it's a small dock that wouldn't bother anybody versus some monstrous thing that would interrupt the waterway, some you might want to say yes to and go license or lease agreement. Others you might just say outright refusal. And then the other 2 possible responses are listed. Again, I do not recommend either of those responses for the reasons stated, but there is the option of simply ignoring the request, and if they build it, they build it. There's a significant eminent domain, or adverse possession risk with that. And then there's also always the option of making an offer to sell the land, which again, I highly recommend, but I tried to put every 5 option I could think of that you could respond with.
Can I make a comment about insurance on this? I used to manage a property right on Hospital Creek. It's recently sold with riparian rights. Own the land under the water out to the channel. It's not the entire creek, number 1. It's only to the navigable channel. So at one time I wanted to know, well, if the city, no place else does that, just Florida. If the city decides to give public property away to private homeowners, I'm managing the place, what is my insurance liability? So I called them up. They said, we don't care what the city, the state, the county says. Below that high tide line, you have no insurance coverage. They do not acknowledge it as private property. So just something to think of when you're talking about liability.
Also, the city of St. Augustine is highly territorial about its mooring fields and does not allow docks to go into those mooring fields without an application. Quite frankly, this request is just lacking way too much information. We can't make a decision without location, but as a preliminary matter, I would strongly discourage the port from allowing any part of our submerged lands to be used for private property. That is going to have significant precedential impact on moving forward. If we let the cat out of the bag one time, we're going to get future requests, and if it's going to potentially impact navigable waterways, that's to the detriment of the public, which we serve. So I don't think we have enough information with this particular inquiry to even move forward, but.
No, and to be clear, I don't think we're not voting on anything here. This was purely a primer kind of on this issue in general, right?
And this was actually, Commissioner Flowers made an excellent point about not spending money until it's necessary to spend the money. This was purely just someone reached out, here's the concepts, find out what the commission is or is not comfortable with as far as going forward, and then using that information, decide what additional information or research needs to be done in order to figure out how you want to proceed with that. This is purely just that we were reached out to, here's our options, what is the commission's desire to deal with, and Commissioner West's point, very well taken, we don't have anywhere near the specifics to say yes or no to this. The question would be if the commission as a majority says, we're never going to lease it, we're never going to license it, we're never going to give away, we're never going to sell it, period, then there's really no point to look into any of this any further. If a majority of the commission says, if the project was small enough and had a small enough footprint or impact on the waterway, and potentially they could come forward and say how it would be a benefit to the waterways, we might consider it. Then conceptually, the commission would decide, would you consider it as a license, or would you prefer to consider it as a lease? Would you prefer to consider it as something else? And I can prepare, to the extent the commission wishes it, additional details as to what a license agreement would look like, what it would require, or what I would submit it would be best to require as far as insurance, permitting, compliance with laws. This is purely, nobody's asking to do it. This was just somebody reaching out. We're in the formative process. What would we have to do? And this was the easiest, cheapest, and best way to get it on the commission's radar to get feedback.
No, sir, it is not. You simply had to tell that attorney or their homeowner to contact the commissioner to sponsor that request. They could come in here and answer our questions, but instead you wrote 2 pages, and how much did this cost us? And it's taken us nowhere. How much did you bill us to do that? Because we answer those questions, not our legal counsel. They need to be here. So if somebody calls you, it'd just be nice if you refer it to the commission.
I will continue to operate as I seem appropriate.
Don't
under the
spend
law.
our money until we tell you it's okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment.
Go ahead.
What I would like is the address. The main thing I want to know is the address. It could be Comanche Island, it could be in the city of St. Augustine, mainland. But and also I'd like to know how they know we own the land.
Oh, that's public.
Huh?
That's public record.
It's public record, but we need a legal description or something to find it. A tax ID number. I could locate it
Go right to
immediately.
the tax collector's office.
Well, they all have ID, parcel numbers.
Yeah, but
Parcel.
you could do that without it
Just
when you go
the
to the
location, the address of the house, and the location of the property that supposedly we own. And I know we own a lot of property in that
And plan
area, but I
view.
just don't know exactly where this
Be
is.
that if our property's
And I
over
would
there by the
consider
boat
it.
ramp, we only own it to the, again, the center of that creek. And if they're coming in from the other side, which is the only places there's houses, how much further would they be?
But a lot of them have Hospital Creek frontage.
Right,
A lot
I say
of
they're
it.
all those down Water Street have Hospital Creek frontage, but the riparian rights only go to the middle of the creek, to the channel. So if we're on the other side from them, we may not actually own the property they're looking to build on.
Right, but
Right.
that would limit the size of their lot.
Right, because
Dock.
it doesn't encompass the whole creek, is my understanding. It only goes to the center.
So at this point, there's nothing to act on, it sounds like. It was just purely informational and.
It's just an informational, to gather additional details and to respond to the attorney with anything other than come in front of us with your entire packet, and you may or may not be wasting your time because we may ultimately vote that we would never do anything. I mean, the potential action to be taken today would be, depending on the details of the project, is this something I should tell the attorney? It's a maybe, it's a no, it's, if we did say yes to it, we would only say yes to it or entertain it as a license, a lease, or what. That's the only potential activity or feedback from the commission, just to be able to say, give them an idea of what to do.
I think the simplest thing is if they want to even pursue this at all, is to give us a plan view of the home, the address, the structure, how far it's going to stick out into the creek. I mean, if I had that in my hands, I could make a decision instantly. And I agree, I think the others would agree with that as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, there's nothing, you can't tell them not to come here. So if they want to come and,
Bring a
provide us some
plan view.
information and actually,
That's what they're ultimately going to have to do anyway. Our
Yeah.
attorney doesn't handle our port business and shouldn't be answering questions. Just call up any commissioner and ask for a sponsor to speak.
so.
All right,
yeah,
well,
they
let's
can-
just say, so what are we doing here?
I don't think we're doing anything except saying that we're not denying it outright, so they're welcome to submit information if they want to.
come back, what is it we want? I guess we.
I think Clay enumerated a pretty good list of things that we would want here, right?
Address
We
and-
need we need the plans, we need information about what of our property is actually going to be impacted. We want more information about potential impacts, both kind of on the public's ability to use the waterway, potential environmental impacts. We need to be able to actually make an informed decision.
and-
So if they want us to make a decision, they need to give us the information to make that decision.
Another one would be what the high tide and low tide marks are in relation to that structure. Because if we're sticking out that we're extreme low tide, somebody couldn't even get by there, would be a
Now,
deal
Mr.
breaker.
Way, see, he's doing, right, you're telling him a bunch of information, so he is now going to go back, continue to bill the board at 200 something an hour to speak to this attorney, when again, he's not supposed to be doing our business. They're supposed to be coming to the port, and I'd really like, would you send me, Elise, an invoice when he sends that in for this particular work? I just want to know what it's costing us. They should be here talking to this board, not wasting our money.
So just, I'm clear then, I will relay all the questions that were posed in the memo, that you want that information, as well
bring
as
it to
the
us.
questions that have been
Yeah, that's
added,
fine.
and they can come back.
That's
And
fine.
I'd like to put in here that we're not wasting the money because he's doing a service to us. We hire him to work for us.
He
And
needs
the
to-
attor- but
sir,
the
we have
Sandy-
to approve the spending
attorney
him to work
contacted
for
Sandy,
us.
Sandy,
He's
let him
working
finish.
for an
Sandy,
attorney
let
right
him
now.
finish.
He's working for an attorney,
I
not
understand
us.
your point, but still.
Well, it'd be
he's-
nice, because he does a
we
lot of
hired
work
him.
off the books without anybody knowing, including fulfilling public records requests for some strange
Right, I
reason.
believe that is the conclusion of new business B, so we can get back to new business A.
Back person, this is completely foreign to me.
I can see it over there too.
Jesus.
You don't get a lot of sleep.
I'm
there, do you?
left-handed. This is really hard for me.
Chairman, while we're waiting, a number of years ago, before any of you were on the board,
John, at the
our
top, there's a
consultant
PowerPoint logo.
presented a master plan to us. But no, this is separate. Presented us a list of all properties we own. And that's got to be somewhere in the file.
It's in our book.
Yeah, it's
When
in,
Ken
yeah.
Crowder gave us that book.
Right.
Okay.
I could copy those.
Are you
and-
talking about the book they give you when you first get
binder.
elected?
Yeah,
And the
that huge
properties
binder.
on it.
I've got that at home somewhere too. I'd be happy to try to scan that and share it with the board.
Yeah, it's in,
Oh, you got it.
yeah.
It's in here,
It's just still
doubling as tech.
very slow.
And I'm happy to try and
No, it's just,
wing the presentation
I mean,
without the PowerPoint.
it's in that, that's where it is, and that's where we have it. The only other thing I would think of is if it should go in the, you check that one and go to the other, you know.
Well, Jen, how about this? Just kind of give us some background and we can always follow up next month with a broader presentation.
Yeah, we threatened its safety and now it's cooperating.
Oh.
It's
There you
right,
go.
it's right there, that way.
Yeah.
Just 10 or 15 minutes for PowerPoint to open up and we're going to be good to go.
All right, there you go. You got it. Well, we'll have to.
No worries. I will.
Should pull up now.
I mean, theoretically, eventually. So I'll just start talking and then somebody flag me if it actually loads and then I can catch up to where I'm at in the PowerPoint presentation. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jen Lumberg. I am your Matanzas Riverkeeper. I've had the pleasure of meeting some of you individually before, but I've never had the opportunity to speak before the board. So thank you, Commissioner West, for inviting me this afternoon. For those of you who aren't familiar with our organization, Matanzas Riverkeeper is a nonprofit, non-governmental organization, and we work to protect the health of the Guantanamo Matanzas watershed through advocacy, education, and community engagement. And so that includes everything from working on local projects that might be detrimental to our waterways, to working on statewide advocacy, to better protect water quality, to getting people out on the waterways and helping them to better connect with our natural areas in hopes of engendering a sense of stewardship to protect our waterways and natural resources. And so we are Matanzas Riverkeeper. We're located right here in St. Augustine, Florida, but there are about 350 waterkeeper organizations that work across the entire globe. We're located in 44 different countries, and basically we work to protect the waterways that our communities rely on. And so waterways, waterkeepers come in all different shapes and sizes. We've got scientists, we've got attorneys, we've got educators, we've got military veterans, and we all basically just focus on trying to do whatever is necessary to serve as the voice of our waterways. And so just to kind of give you a 1,000-foot view of some of the projects that we work on, so we look at local comprehensive plans and land development codes to try and make recommendations for changes that'll be more protective to our waterways. We work on legislative advocacy when the state is looking at new bills or new laws that are going to affect how water quality is protected or things that might be detrimental to it. We work on a little bit of an advocacy role there. We work on statewide regulations. So when the state is looking at how stormwater ponds are required to be built and maintained and operated, or septic systems or wastewater treatment facilities, we're kind of involved in that process a little bit as well. And then we work on land conservation as well as community engagement projects. So the bulk of what I wanted to kind of explain to you today was just a really high-level overview of water quality generally within the district and in our local waterways. Yay! Yay!
Perfect timing.
Not bad. Let's see here, slideshow. I'm gonna try to press as few buttons as possible so that I don't make it angry. All right, there we go. So I figure the best way to kind of introduce this topic is to give you a little bit of Clean Water Act 101. And I recognize that not everybody gets as excited about water law as I do, so try and stick with me here. I'll try and keep it really high level so that your eyes don't glaze over too badly. But basically, the way that state water regulation works is that every single waterway in the state of Florida is assigned a classification based on its designated use. And so you've got kind of this sliding scale of designated uses from Class 1 waterways to Class 5 waterways. And so your Class 1 waterways are your potable water, your Class 2 is shellfish propagation. The vast majorities of water in the state of Florida are designated Class 3, which is fishing and primary contact recreation. Class 4 is agricultural waterways, and Class 5 is navigation and industrial use. And so as you can kind of see here, you kind of want the most protective standards to be applied to the Class 1 waterways, that's our drinking water. We need that to be really, really clean in order to mitigate any public health and safety risks. And then your Class 5 waterways don't necessarily need to have as strong of water quality standards. So there is a list of regulated pollutants that the state manages, and for each of those classifications of water, there's a threshold of water quality for each of those pollutants. And so what the state does is they go out, they do water quality sampling, and then they assess the waterways across the state to determine whether they are meeting the water quality standards for that particular waterway's designated use. And if they are, we're good to go. If they're not, those waterways are declared impaired. That's kind of the term that's used to describe a waterway that's not meeting its water quality standards. And then if a waterway is declared impaired, then the state develops what's called a TMDL, a total maximum daily load, which I like to describe as a pollution diet. The state is basically trying to figure out how much of this pollutant can this waterway assimilate and still be able to heal itself back to where it's meeting this water quality standard. And in order to meet that TMDL, the state will develop something called a BMAP, which is a Basin Management Action Plan, which is basically the projects and the plan that the state is going to implement to try and meet that pollution reduction goal. So that's kind of water quality 101. And so I have here just a little bit of a zoomed in map that talks about some of the local impairments that we have in the waterways here. And some of these might be beyond the scope of this particular district, so I apologize if that's the case. But basically everything that you're seeing in gray or green there is a waterway that the state has declared impaired. So that is a waterway that is not currently meeting the water quality standards for its designated use. And like I said earlier, most of the waterways around the state are designated Class 3, but we do locally here have several Class 2 waterways, several shellfish harvest areas, and we're one of the last places in Northeast Florida where we do have some Class 2 waterways that are open to shellfish harvest and consumption, which is something that I know a lot of folks are really proud of. And so these are just a couple of call-outs here that I wanted to bring your attention to. As you can see, most of the impairments that we have in our local waterways are for fecal bacteria and nutrient pollution. And so what the state does is every 2 years, they will do an assessment of all of the waterways around the state to determine, based on the data that they've collected, whether or not these waterways are meeting their water quality standards or whether they are impaired. And so what I have here, the state is currently in the process of doing this biennial assessment. And so what I have here is a list of some of the local waterways and the causative pollutants that they have just determined are actually impaired. Something to keep in mind here is that Despite the fact that some of these are just now being listed, some of these impairments have existed for quite a while. Unfortunately, the way that the state approaches water quality sampling and testing is they're a bit under-resourced, so it's kind of a triage situation. So a lot of times, the places that are in really, really bad shape, for example, Indian River Lagoon, Lake Okeechobee, that's where the testing goes, that's where the resources go, that's where they're focusing on making their TMDLs and their BMAPs. Meanwhile, areas like ours, where we certainly have some water quality issues, but we don't have massive large mammal and fish die-offs, we're kind of put on the back burner. And so it's kind of an awkward situation where things aren't terrible here, but they're heading in the wrong direction. And so it's a little bit of a challenge to try and light a fire under the state to pay a little bit more attention to this area and try and keep things from getting bad rather than waiting till things get catastrophic and then trying to fix them after the fact. So, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the impairments that we're seeing for pollution locally is from fecal bacteria and nutrients, and unfortunately, a lot of those pollutants are associated with urbanization. So, as more development comes, you have more stormwater runoff, wastewater treatment facilities discharging either directly into the waterway or via reclaimed water. We've got a big issue with the land application of biosolids. That is the solid waste that comes out of wastewater treatment facilities. There was recently a law that prohibited it from being land applied in South Florida, so a lot of it is getting shipped up towards our neck of the woods for land application and disposal, which means we're seeing heightened phosphorus levels in the St. John's watershed. And then septic systems, wetland loss from development, and aquatic debris and sea level rise are also kind of contributing factors to our pollution issues. If anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in also.
I do. This, of this, which one of you things is our number one problem? Septic system?
So unfortunately, with water quality issues, it comes from so many different sources that there's really not a silver bullet solution. And another issue is that we aren't completely sure what we're working with. The city of St. Augustine just last year did a study to try and identify where their septic systems were located. St. Johns County doesn't have a comparable map of that at this point. So they don't know how many septic systems there are, they don't know how old they are. They put a request in their legislative budget for this year to try and get funding to do that study. Okay. But at this point, there's a lot of knowledge gap that we're kind of struggling against.
So you know about septic systems, you're aware of the issues we have. The one last question about that would be this. I was on the next door and somebody was talking about the county approved another thing, that another neighborhood that would be using septic systems. So I said, oh, that's yucky. And Commissioner Dean came back and said, no, it's not yucky because it's a new kind of safe septic system. What's that?
So there are all different types of septic systems that can treat to all different levels. And it's kind of finicky because the state is currently in the process of updating their septic system regulations right now. And so something that we've been watching is that there's almost been a little bit of a rush to try and get some more applications approved before these new rules go into place. So there's a little bit of a front end push to kind of get in under the wire on that, because when the septic regulations were initially written, they were initially written with public health in mind and not environmental impacts. So it was really focusing on preventing fecal bacteria from getting into the waterways, but not necessarily nutrients. And what we've realized at this point is that a lot of septic systems are big contributors of nutrients. And so now the new regulations are being updated specifically to try and be protective for nutrient migration.
So there may be some way to go septic and be safe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there is certainly a correct place for septic systems to be installed. The problem is a lot of the older ones weren't put in the correct place necessarily, and a lot of them haven't been maintained. So, delving into the challenges a little bit more, as everyone here knows, St. Johns County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Florida. This graph that I have here, I just thought was really interesting. So the St. Johns County first adopted its comprehensive plan in 1986, and they tried to project what growth was going to look like by the year 2000. And those three lines on the bottom are the low, medium, and high growth projections for the year 2000. The low was just under 60,000, the high was just over 85,000, then that yellow line there is the actual growth in St. Johns County, and that is just over 123,000, and it's projected to hit about 400,000 by the year 2045. So obviously, when the county government started to plan, they didn't really do a great job of predicting what the population growth was going to look like for the county, and so that has been a huge challenge, is just the rapid urbanization of St. Johns County. Another challenge, like I mentioned before, are these data gaps. the state is really trying to prioritize these areas that are having these catastrophic water quality issues. And so because of that, our area locally is not prioritized for additional testing. There are some waterways like San Sebastian, like some sections of the Matanzas, where anecdotally we know that there are water quality issues. We've seen data from Flagler College or the University of Florida that suggests that there are some fecal and nutrient issues. But since the state doesn't have that data, it's not considering it when determining if it's impaired, which triggers the TMDL development, which triggers the BMAP process. So unfortunately, we're running into some issues where we know the data exists. We just need to figure out how to get that data uploaded into the state's watershed information network so that the state can consider it when it's determining where to allocate its resources. And then infrastructure funding is always a huge challenge. Doing those septic to sewer conversion projects, or first identifying where the septic systems are so that we can do the septic to sewer projects, and then updating wastewater treatment facilities to treat the effluent to a higher level is also something that can be really helpful. And so solutions, we do a waterway cleanup program. It's called the Litter Getter. We've got a 24-foot Carolina skiff where we take folks out on the water to pick up trash and aquatic debris. We generally get about 10,000 pounds a year between just small plastic bags, straws, et cetera, and parts of docks and lumber and tires that people throw out there. Septic to sewer is obviously going to be a high priority once the county is able to identify where those areas are. Reclaimed water, I put on there as a solution with an asterisk. Reclaimed water is basically where instead of directly discharging the effluent from a wastewater treatment facility, they use it for irrigation. And a lot of the new developments have reclaimed water lines put in for their yard irrigations, and that can be extremely helpful because you're offsetting the consumption of potable water by using reclaimed water. The issue is that reclaimed water is often very high in nutrients, so if it's being used for irrigation on land that is also being fertilized, then you still have heightened nutrient runoff from those parcels a lot of time. And then outreach and education obviously is extremely important. We've got a lot of folks moving here from other places where they might not understand how the ecosystems work, or they might not understand how what they do in their yard does affect the water even if they don't live on the water. So that's something that we work on. And then we're also looking for funding for increased monitoring and data entry to try and fill some of those gaps that the state's missing. So
where are y'all getting your funding right now?
So we are a nonprofit, non-governmental organization. We are member-driven and community foundation grants.
Community foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is one of the reasons I asked Jen to come, is because I would like for this board to start considering, it's not an urgent request, but I really hate functioning without that data. And if we have the data, if we're getting it from Flagler, if we're getting it from UF Whitney Lab, if all it takes is someone to process it into DEP's system, and you say it way more eloquently than I do, then that is something that I think the public deserves to know. And I'm not sure how much that would cost, but I think it basically requires a low-tech data entry person that has the patience to deal with that. So it's just something I want this board to just keep in the back of their mind. And I've encouraged Jen to, maybe come up with some sort of proposal, but I wanted her at least to educate this board on the data that we are missing going forward with our water pollution issues. So anyway.
Will that be, when that data gets in, is that public, you'd be public data available online?
Yeah. The state manages the Watershed Information Network, which is a publicly accessible data set.
Right.
And basically when the state does its biennial assessment every 2 years, they look at the Watershed Information Network, and that's the data that they're considering to determine whether or not a waterway is or isn't meeting water quality standards. The problem is the state doesn't have the resources to test, so we've got, like the San Sebastian hasn't had regular testing since 2014. There are other areas.
San Sebastian? Mm-hmm. Oh, boy, you better
Yeah.
be careful going up there and testing that water.
But Flagler students have been testing water in the San Sebastian, and it is showing that there are some pollution issues up there. The problem is, if Flagler's data is not in UF's Watershed Information Network, the state doesn't consider that. So we know that there's an impairment, we know that there's pollution, but the state doesn't recognize it because they aren't considering Flagler's data.
But they will consider UF's data.
Only if somebody uploads it into their system.
If somebody uploads it. Does the GTMRR do this kind of testing, or?
Yeah, so they have several monitoring stations that do real-time monitoring for a lot of different parameters, and then they go out and do grab samples for nutrients, fecal, things like that. But they were in the same situation where it was just too much of, it was too cumbersome to upload the data into the state system. The reformatting and the time commitment that it took was a lot for them. And I think that they have now allocated staff specifically to work on that now, so their information is being considered by the state. But Flagler and the University of Florida at this point, they don't have the resources, the manpower to upload their data sets yet.
How is your organization funded?
So we are a member-driven organization, and we also get community foundation grants.
Okay. Thank you.
So before Jen spends a lot more time, coming up with, I guess it's just a one-pager for a funding request, but it's going to take some resources to find out how much time it would take for a data entry person. Before she embarked on that and spent a lot of time and energy on that, I wanted her to at least advise the board on what the situation is and whether or not we want to green light her pursuing a funding request to have a data entry person move forward. So that was kind of the objective. I know this board likes advance notice on funding requests. I know I do. So that is kind of the objective here, to get a little bit of background information and see if there's an appetite on this board to move forward with pulling that proposal together.
Speaking purely for myself, I would say absolutely. The San Sebastian River water quality is something that has come up a number of times over the last few years.
Bad.
It's very bad. One thing I'd be really curious to know, it was not on your list, but do you have a sense of what the role of boats just directly dumping sewage into the water has? Because that's something that has come, Josh, we've tried and failed a few times to address that here. I know the San Sebastian in particular is known for being sort of a trap back there. So I don't know, beyond monitoring, sort of looking beyond, I guess it'll come down to convincing the state to take it seriously, and then we just sort of go from there. So there's not really any local initiatives that need to go from that. But yeah, I would absolutely be in favor of spending some money to figure out exactly what's going on in San Sebastian and trying to light a fire under the state's feet to do something about it.
Yeah, I think we could do it because I think it'd be under maintenance, water maintenance for our charter. And I'd be very interested in that. And our grant application is right online, simple.
Right. Well, I know we've only got about 10 minutes left, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we go ahead and give you the green light to pursue a grant proposal to come back to the board with a funding request for that data entry. That's my motion.
I'll second that. Any other discussion?
I just think that if they do come back for funding requests, that we're a part of a specific project, whether it's San Sebastian, instead of something just overly broad. But we say that we want to find out what the water quality is in the San Sebastian from the bridge all the way to the river mouth or whatever.
Sure.
Just something that it's.
Yeah, it'll need to be relatively narrowly
Specific,
tailored, because,
yeah.
right, for instance, like Moses Creek and Moultrie Creek are not technically in our district, so, as much help as they need, we can't help them. So that's a motion and a
That's
second?
the motion as amended.
Sure, yeah.
Elise, would you mind to put on next thing too, just regarding the same issue? I had some ideas I wanted to talk about a pump-out boat, and I would present those, because right now the city has only a pump-out boat that services the city marina, the mooring fields, and if you're at anchor in the city limits, they will service you, but none of the marinas up San Sebastian has a pump-out at the slip. Now, Oasis has one in the galley, so when you're in the slip, when you're going to be hauled out, you can access it, but not on the dock. Oyster Creek, River's Bend. Anyways, if you'll just put that on the next.
Pump out boats.
Pump out boat, Sandy Flowers, new business, I think. Good, so that was a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None, great, so
Thank you, John.
please come back and ask us for money.
Sounds good, yeah. And also, if you guys ever have any questions about water quality issues or anything like that, I'm happy to serve as a resource to
Do you have a
answer.
card?
I do.
Okay.
I'll leave it with you.
Great, well, thank you very much. That brings us to public comment. No one rushing up to comment. Good, that is now comments by commissioners. Tom?
Yes, what I wanted to discuss briefly was we had a master plan developed, considering what Sandy said about an executive director. And it was requested in that master plan that we have that we should have a master executive director. But it all comes down to the money. And so at that time, what the board did, again, before anybody here was on it, we did appoint a consultant, Ken Crowder. And Ken came to all of our meetings, and if we had an idea, we could bounce off of him. When the Volano people came and actually approached me about a pier, not pier, but the floating dock, then Vivian Browning of Volano, myself, and Ken met out there. His costs were very low, and he was
only
very
$100
effective
an
in getting
hour.
started.
Yeah.
So, but he resigned from that post, so maybe we should start looking again into finding somebody who could be a consultant. It'd be great to have an executive director, but I don't think we can afford it.
I agree on, it had to be just on what do they call, outsourced, not outsourced, but a
As needed.
1099 employee that's really working as a consultant when we have a project for him to work on, otherwise there is no
Yes,
payment.
yeah.
So it's there when they need, and if we'd like to put that on the next thing, I've got a couple people, I'm sure, that would come in already.
So why don't we
And talk to us
start that process of perhaps at least having an idea that we're going to start working toward a consultant? No formal motion, just an agreement that we could start the process.
Could I send
I'll start
everybody
thinking about
that
that.
document that I found from Ken explaining, which is several pages of what an executive director could do, et cetera, and just give that to everybody to
Yeah, if I can
review?
find a copy of that master plan. Elise, you know what I'm talking about. It was done in the 90s?
It was done in the 90s.
90s, yes.
Yeah.
Do we still have a copy of that still somewhere?
It was in the,
Okay.
I saw it.
Must be in the records,
I'll
yeah.
go get it, and that way everybody, it was very, very informative,
Yeah.
and I thought it could be super helpful.
Well, I just suggest that we start working toward that, and if people want to, you have ideas of who it could be, I have ideas of who it could be, whatever, and then we'll start the process of,
Could we put that on next meeting?
What do you want to put?
I'd sponsor a couple people coming in to talk to us about that. What the-
discuss port
What the executive
consultant.
director could do for us, yeah.
Great.
one other thing before I go.
What are we looking for?
Is the invocation. I thank you very much, Jane, for doing it today. It was
You're
very
welcome.
appropriate. I really appreciate it. And I didn't mean to overstep your bounds when I was talking to Jace, Linda's son. But if anybody ever, when it comes to them, if they don't want to do it, just let me know in advance, and I'll always be glad to do it. And we need to choose somebody to
Yes.
represent the board at the,
Regatta of Lights, right.
Of
We need a
Lights.
judge. I would nominate Jane. Sandy, you've declined in the past because
What
it's
day
too
is
late,
it this
right?
year? It's so dark.
Right,
so the Saturday.
Sorry,
I won't be here.
right.
so dark.
Yeah, it's a Saturday night.
21st or something like that?
I've got the calendar here.
Yeah, we can
Confirmed it.
send it.
Yeah, with the kids anyway?
They would probably love to go back to the yacht club. They've always felt so welcome
They got a
there.
big party, I hear.
It is a big party, yeah. Yeah, I've done it before. It's a lot of fun. I don't need to do it again, though, Jane. I will nominate you to do that.
Okay, I just need to know the date.
All right, that's a second.
I second Jane.
All in favor?
Third, all in favor?
You know, the date. Just going back to that.
There's one more thing about Flip.
People.
Everybody here, all of us are invited to the reception afterwards. That's the really nice thing.
At the
Because
yacht
they have
club,
a
right?
lot of food, you get a good, nice meal, and we all invited to go to the yacht club after the Regatta of Lights. Don't park in the barking building that night, because you'll never get out.
Okay, in all seriousness, what is the date?
I'm trying to find it.
Boy, oh boy, yeah, good question.
December.
December 11th.
Thank you.
Yes.
Nice.
It is.
Okay.
Okay. Are you done with your comments?
Yes.
I had a comment.
Well, can we go down the line?
Oh, sorry.
Anything? I just wanted to quickly say, on the idea that Carl Blow presented at our last meeting for a dock under the 312 bridge on the east side, I spoke with Commissioner Waldron, who was very enthusiastic about it. He put me in touch with Joy Andrews, the Assistant County Administrator, and we are meant to talk the two of us with, she wanted to talk to Nancy Sykes-Klein on the city commission because there will potentially be some Fish Island impact there. So just the ball is rolling on that. But
When you said dock, did you?
sorry, I
mean
meant boat ramp, yeah, not dock, sorry.
Sounds like
The north side?
On the
east,
east
north.
side, under the bridge, under the 312 bridge.
Okay.
Yeah, by those
Public
apartments
property.
there, yeah. Yeah, it's DOT property, and it's all infill. It just backs right up to the water, so there wouldn't be any real dredging or no wetland impact or anything. Maybe, I mean, we'll see. It's the pace of government, so look out, 2035 for that, that
we'll
boat
be
ramp.
dead.
Jane?
I mentioned this last time, the website,
Yes.
it needs a major overhaul. I don't know how we go about this, but it's missing bios, it's dated.
Well, the people that I've asked for bios, I put your bio in the same day you sent it.
Okay,
It's in. Tom has not sent me a bio. I've been waiting for that. So the bios has nothing to do with the website, it's the person sending it.
okay, but it also, no pun intended, but it could be more navigable.
It's awful.
Well, do you want me to put you in touch with the Reeds from Avid?
Is it Avid? They're neighbors, I'll talk to them.
What
there
about
you
this?
go.
Do you remember we were talking about the college doing a apprenticeship for us? I did finally get in touch with somebody over there that said at the Career Development Center that they could redesign the website, do all kinds of the records, digitizing, all of that stuff we talked about. But that we simply have to fill out some kind of form first with Career Development Center, and they accept us as a legitimate employer, and then you're good to go to post for the apprenticeship programs in the college.
Maybe put
They
it
could
on
do
the
it
agenda for next month.
Yeah, we'll have a discussion
I'll
on
bring
the
the forms
website.
in.
Thank you,
and
that'd be
submit.
great.
Okay.
And Sandy, do you have any comments?
Only comment I have is I have several people that have asked me this month, would we please reconsider the time that we meet? And they'd rather meet about 5 o'clock at the city hall. And just y'all to be thinking about that. It's not the first time. That it would be more convenient for a lot of people and it could be televised. So just passing that on.
Good. Next meeting is Tuesday, December 21st. There being no other business, this meeting is adjourned.